The unwanted arrival, Marcus Chen wiped the sweat from his forehead as he navigated through the crowded new Terra spaceport. The massive structure buzzed with activity, hundreds of species from across the galaxy moving in organized chaos. Cargo haulers beeped warnings, merchants hawked exotic goods, and the universal translator system created a constant hum of overlapping conversations. Marcus hated every second of it. He had come for one reason only: to collect the hydroponic nutrient shipment that would keep his farm operational for another season. At 42 years old, with sun-weathered skin and shoulders still broad despite 3 years of solitary farming, Marcus moved through the crowd with the efficient purpose of someone who wanted to be anywhere else. His dark hair, streaked with premature gray, needed cutting. His work clothes, clean but worn, marked him as a colonist who spent more time with soil than people. The automated cargo system directed him to Bay 17. Marcus shouldered his pack and headed that direction, his mind already calculating the work waiting back at the farm. That's when he saw her. She sat alone on a metal bench near the arrival gates, surrounded by 2 expensive-looking cases. Her skin was a warm copper color that seemed to shimmer under the harsh artificial lights, and her hair fell in waves of deep burgundy down her back. She was humanoid in shape, clearly Valerian based on the distinctive golden eyes and the faint luminescent patterns that traced along her exposed forearms. Those golden eyes were currently fixed on the floor, and even from a distance, Marcus could see the shimmer of tears on her cheeks. She wore what appeared to be traditional Valerian formal wear, a flowing garment in shades of cream and gold that marked her as a bride candidate. The outfit was immaculate, clearly expensive, and completely at odds with her current circumstances. She sat utterly alone in a spaceport filled with thousands of beings, and something about her isolation struck Marcus like a physical blow. He told himself to keep walking. He had his own problems, his own grief, his own reasons for choosing isolation on a frontier world. But his feet changed direction anyway, carrying him toward the bench. As he approached, she looked up. Her golden eyes were striking, large, and expressive, with vertical pupils that contracted slightly in surprise. Her face was round and soft, with full cheeks and gentle features that Valerian beauty standards apparently found objectionable. Marcus thought she looked kind. "Are you all right?" he asked, his voice rusty from disuse. He rarely spoke to anyone beyond the occasional supply run. She straightened immediately, wiping at her eyes with slender copper fingers. "Yes, I am well. Thank you for your concern." Her English was flawless, though her accent gave each word a melodic quality. "I am simply waiting." Marcus shifted his weight, suddenly unsure. "Waiting for someone?" A flash of pain crossed her features, quickly masked. "No, not anymore." She gestured vaguely at the empty space around her. "My intended arrived 3 hours ago." He looked at me, said I was not as described in my profile, and departed. Marcus felt a surge of anger on her behalf. "He just left you here?" She nodded, her hands folding carefully in her lap. "He said I was too large, too heavy, that the matching service had misrepresented my physical form." Her voice remained steady, but Marcus could hear the hurt beneath the words. He was quite clear about his disappointment. Marcus looked at her more carefully. By human standards, she would be considered pleasantly curved, healthy, and strong-looking. Her form suggested someone capable and robust, not the frail, willowy build that apparently passed for attractive among some species. He found himself thinking that anyone who would abandon her over something so superficial was an idiot. "That's garbage," he said bluntly. "Complete garbage." Her golden eyes widened in surprise. "I beg your pardon. I mean, that's a terrible thing to do to anyone who traveled across star systems to meet you." Marcus ran a hand through his hair, a nervous gesture he'd never quite broken. "What's your name?" "Sienna," she replied softly. "Sienna Velros of the Valerian Commonwealth." "Marcus Chen. I run a farm about 50 kilometers from here." He paused, wondering if he was about to make a huge mistake. "Look, I don't know what your plans are now, but if you need somewhere to stay while you figure things out, I have space, extra room. You could help with farm work if you wanted, but it's not required." Sienna studied him intently, those golden eyes seeming to catalog every detail of his face. "Why would you offer this to a stranger? particularly one who has just been rejected. It was a fair question. Marcus barely spoke to his neighbors, let alone invited strangers into his home. He thought about the emptiness of his farmhouse, the silence that had become both comfort and torture over the past 3 years. He thought about Elena and what she would have said if she'd seen him walk past someone in need. Because it's the right thing to do, he said finally. No obligations, no expectations, just a place to stay until you figure out your next move. Sienna was quiet for a long moment. Then she nodded slowly. I accept your offer, Marcus Chen. I will contribute where I can and try not to be a burden. Didn't say you would be, Marcus replied, reaching for one of her cases. It was heavier than expected. My transport is in the north lot. We should get moving if we want to make it back before dark. As they walked through the spaceport, Marcus became aware of the attention they drew. A human farmer and a rejected Valerian bride made an unusual pairing, even on a frontier world, accustomed to strange alliances. He ignored the stairs, focusing instead on navigating toward the parking area. His transport was a sturdy 10-year-old ground vehicle, scarred and dented but mechanically sound. Marcus loaded Sienna's cases into the cargo bed and opened the passenger door for her. She climbed in gracefully, arranging her formal garments around her with practiced ease. The journey to the farm took them through New Terra's varied landscape. The planet had been terraformed 20 years earlier, but it still retained much of its alien character. The vegetation grew in shades of purple and deep blue rather than earth green, and the rock formations jutted from the ground in twisted, beautiful shapes. Twin suns hung in the amber sky, one larger and yellower than the other. Sienna watched everything with evident fascination, occasionally asking questions about the local ecosystem. Marcus found himself answering more fully than he intended, discussing soil composition and growing seasons, the challenges of adapting Earth crops to alien environments. You know much about agriculture, Sienna observed. Did you study this formally? No, Marcus replied. My wife was the scientist. Elena, she was a xenobotanist. She taught me most of what I know. Sienna's voice was gentle. She died 3 years ago. Medical emergency. We were too far from advanced treatment facilities. Marcus kept his eyes on the road, his hands tight on the steering controls. I came to New Terra to start over. Turned out I was good at farming. I am sorry for your loss, Sienna said quietly. Loss leaves scars that do not easily heal. Something in her tone suggested she spoke from experience, but Marcus didn't press. Everyone on the frontier had their reasons for leaving their old lives behind. As they crested the final hill, Marcus's farm came into view. The main house was a prefabricated structure, expanded and modified over 3 years into something that almost felt like home. Solar panels covered the roof, and a wind turbine spun lazily in the afternoon breeze. Surrounding the house were neat fields of various crops, greenhouses, storage buildings, and equipment sheds. It wasn't much, but it was his. It's not fancy, Marcus said, suddenly self-conscious. Pretty basic compared to Valerian City. Sienna's gaze swept across the property, taking in the ordered fields and the mountains rising in the distance. It is peaceful, she said. I like it very much. Something in Marcus's chest loosened at her word. He pulled the transport to a stop near the main house and helped Sienna with her luggage. Inside, the house was clean but sparse, decorated with the bare minimum of furniture and personal items. Marcus had packed away most of Elena's belongings, but a few things remained. A painting she'd loved, her favorite coffee mug, the hand-woven blanket draped over the couch. Guest room is down the hall, second door, Marcus said, setting down her cases. Bathroom is shared. Kitchen is obviously here. Make yourself at home. Sienna stood in the center of the living area, slowly turning to take everything in. Thank you, Marcus. This is more kindness than I expected to find today. Marcus nodded awkwardly, unsure how to respond. I'll let you get settled. I need to check on the evening watering systems. There's food in the cooling unit if you're hungry. He escaped outside, breathing deeply of the alien air that had become familiar over 3 years. Inviting a complete stranger, an alien stranger, to live in his home. Elena would have called it impulsive. She also would have approved, as the twin suns began their descent toward the horizon, painting the sky in shades of orange and deep purple. Marcus completed his evening rounds. The crops looked healthy, the equipment hummed along efficiently, and for the first time in 3 years there was someone waiting when he returned to the house. He found Sienna in the kitchen, having changed from her formal attire into simpler clothing. She had discovered his limited supply of ingredients and was preparing something that smelled surprisingly good. "I hope you do not mind," she said, not turning from the stove. "Cooking helps me think." "I don't mind at all," Marcus replied, realizing he meant it. They ate together as the darkness fell outside, the comfortable silence occasionally broken by simple conversation. And as Marcus lay in bed that night, staring at the ceiling, he wondered if maybe, just maybe, the isolation he'd wrapped around himself like armor was finally beginning to crack. HFY-inspired, Marcus woke before dawn, as he always did. For a moment he lay still, listening to the unfamiliar sounds of another person in his house. Water running through pipes, soft footsteps in the hallway, the gentle clink of dishes in the kitchen. 3 years of solitude had made these ordinary sounds feel extraordinary. He dressed quickly in his work clothes and made his way to the kitchen, where he found Sienna, already awake and preparing breakfast. She had tied her burgundy hair back in a practical braid, and she wore simple pants and a tunic that looked far more comfortable than yesterday's formal attire. In the soft morning light filtering through the windows, the luminescent patterns on her copper skin glowed faintly, tracing delicate lines along her arms and neck. "You are an early riser," Marcus observed, moving toward the coffee maker. "On Valara, we believe the first hours of light are the most productive," Sienna replied. She gestured to a pan where she was preparing something with eggs and local vegetables. "I hope I did not disturb you." "No, I'm always up at this hour." Marcus poured coffee into 2 mugs, sliding one across the counter to her. "You didn't have to cook. I wanted to earn my place here," Sienna said simply. "You have given me shelter when I had none. It is the least I can do." They ate together as the twin suns rose, casting double shadows across the landscape. Marcus found himself watching Sienna more than he meant to, noticing the graceful economy of her movements, the way her golden eyes brightened when she tasted something she enjoyed. "I would like to see your farm properly," Sienna said, as they finished eating. "Perhaps I can be of assistance with your work." Marcus nodded, surprised by how much the offer pleased him. "I need to check the northern fields today. The moisture sensors are showing unusual patterns. Could be a malfunction, or could be something with the soil." Outside, the air was cool and fresh, carrying scents both familiar and alien. Marcus led Sienna through his property, explaining his operation as they walked. He grew a variety of crops, mixing earth species with compatible native plants. The work was challenging, requiring constant adaptation and problem-solving, but it gave him purpose when everything else had felt meaningless. The northern fields stretched across 5 hectares, currently planted with a hybrid grain developed specifically for new terrace soil conditions. As they approached, Marcus could see immediately that something was wrong. The plants that should have been knee-high and vibrant were instead stunted and yellowing, their leaves curling at the edges. "These plants are dying," Sienna said softly, kneeling beside a row. Her fingers touched the affected leaves with surprising tenderness. "May I examine them more closely?" "Go ahead," Marcus replied, squatting beside her. Up close, he could smell her scent, something like warm spices in summer rain. "I don't understand what's happening." The soil chemistry was perfect when I planted. Sienna carefully uprooted one of the struggling plants, holding it up to examine the root system. Her golden eyes narrowed in concentration, and Marcus watched as she ran her copper fingers along the roots, feeling textures he couldn't see. "Marcus," she said slowly, "what do you know about my background?" "About why I came here as a bride candidate." Question caught him off guard. "Not much. Just that Valerians are known for being adaptable, good companions for frontier settlements." A bitter smile crossed Sienna's face. "That is the marketing version. The truth is more complicated." She set the plant down carefully. "On Valara, I was a xenobiologist specializing in agricultural systems. I spent 15 years studying how different species crops interact with alien environments." Marcus stared at her. "You're a scientist." "Was a scientist," Sienna corrected. "I made the mistake of publishing research that contradicted the findings of a politically connected colleague. When I refused to retract my work, I was blacklisted from academic positions. She gestured at her body, and my physical form, which does not match Valerian beauty standards, made it difficult to find another path. The bride program seemed like an escape. That's insane, Marcus said. Your home world exiled a qualified scientist over politics and appearance? Valerian society values conformity above many things, Sienna replied. She turned her attention back to the plant. But my training may be useful here. These roots show signs of parasitic infection. See these dark spots? This discoloration pattern? I have seen something similar before. Marcus leaned closer, studying where she pointed. The soil was sterilized during terraforming. How could a parasite survive? Perhaps it did not survive, Sienna suggested. Perhaps it was introduced. They spent the morning collecting samples, working side by side with an ease that surprised Marcus. Sienna's scientific background became immediately apparent in her methodical approach. The way she documented everything, the questions she asked about his planting schedule, and seed sources. Marcus found himself explaining his entire supply chain, from the Galactic agricultural cooperative that provided his seeds to the various nutrient supplements he used. By midday, they had filled a dozen sample containers and returned to the house. Marcus's small laboratory, really just a converted storage room with basic analysis equipment, suddenly felt inadequate under Sienna's appraising gaze. This is what you have to work with? She asked, surveying the modest equipment. It's a frontier world, Marcus said defensively. Resources are limited. Sienna shook her head. I did not mean criticism. I am impressed you have managed so well with so little. She began arranging samples on the workbench. On Valara, I had access to equipment worth more than this entire farm, but good science is not about expensive tools. It is about careful observation and logical thinking. They worked through the afternoon, Sienna conducting tests with Marcus's basic equipment while explaining what she was looking for. Marcus found himself fascinated not just by her knowledge, but by her passion. Her golden eyes lit up when she discovered something interesting, and she spoke about plant biology with an enthusiasm that reminded him painfully of Elena. As evening approached, Sienna straightened from the microscope with a grim expression. Marcus, this is not a natural pathogen. The cellular structure is too uniform, too perfectly designed to target this specific grain hybrid. Someone engineered this. Marcus felt his blood run cold. Engineered? You mean deliberately? Yes. Sienna pulled up her analysis on the small display screen. Look at this. The fungus attacks only plants with this particular genetic marker, one that is unique to the drought-resistant grain hybrid you planted. A natural pathogen would show some variation, some adaptation to different hosts. This is surgical in its precision. Who would do this? Marcus demanded. And why? I do not know the who, Sienna replied, but the why is usually simple: control. If someone can control food production on frontier worlds, they control everything. Marcus thought about his seed supplier, the Galactic Agricultural Cooperative. It was a subsidiary of Frontier Provisions, Inc., one of the megacorporations that dominated colonial supply chains. He had never questioned where his seeds came from, never thought to doubt their integrity. I need to contact the Colonial Agricultural Office, Marcus said, reaching for his communication tablet. They need to know about this. He spent the next hour on calls, first to the local agricultural inspector, then to officials at the colonial capital. By the time he finished, his suspicions had been confirmed. 3 other farms in the region reported similar problems, all using seeds from the same supplier, all experiencing identical crop failures. They are opening an investigation, Marcus said, setting down the tablet. But it will take weeks, maybe months. In the meantime, we are supposed to quarantine affected fields and wait. Sienna had been standing at the window, watching the twin suns set. She turned to face him, her copper skin glowing in the fading light. I may be able to help. On Valara, during the territorial conflicts, we faced similar attacks on agricultural systems. I developed countermeasures, ways to neutralize engineered pathogens without destroying the crops. You can save the fields? Marcus asked, hope rising in his chest. Perhaps, Sienna said carefully. I would need to run more tests, develop a treatment specific to this pathogen. It will take time and resources you may not have. Marcus moved closer to her, close enough to see the complex patterns of light shifting beneath her copper skin. Whatever you need. This farm is not just my livelihood. It is all I have left of the life Elena and I were building together. I cannot lose it. Sienna met his gaze and something passed between them, an understanding that went beyond words. Then we will save it, she said simply. Together. They worked late into the night, Sienna sketching out treatment protocols while Marcus calculated what resources he had available. They ate a late dinner of leftovers, too focused to prepare anything elaborate, and continued working at the kitchen table surrounded by notes and data tablets. It was past midnight when Marcus finally noticed how close they were sitting, their shoulders nearly touching as they reviewed Sienna's latest calculations. He became acutely aware of her presence, the warmth radiating from her copper skin, the soft sound of her breathing, the way her burgundy hair had escaped its braid to frame her face. "Sienna," he said softly, and she looked up at him with those remarkable golden eyes. "Yes." Marcus hesitated, words failing him. He had not felt anything like this since Elena's death, had convinced himself he never would again. But Sienna had walked into his life barely 24 hours ago, and somehow made him feel alive in a way he had forgotten was possible. Before he could find the words, his security system blared a warning. Marcus was on his feet instantly, moving to the monitoring panel by the door. The perimeter sensors showed a vehicle approaching fast, running without lights, less than a kilometer away. "Someone's coming," he said, his military training from years ago flooding back. "And they are not friendly." Sienna moved to the window, peering carefully through the blinds. "I see lights. Multiple vehicles now. They are surrounding the property." Marcus felt ice in his veins. This was no random visit. Someone knew what they had discovered, knew they were a threat to whatever scheme was unfolding. He grabbed the pulse rifle he kept mounted beside the door, checking its charge. "Back door," he said urgently. "We need to reach the transport. It's our only way out." They slipped through the house in darkness, Marcus leading the way with practiced efficiency. Through the kitchen, through the mudroom, out the back entrance into the cool night air. Behind them, he heard the sound of the front door being breached, boots on his floor, voices calling out in languages he did not recognize. The transport sat behind the main barn, 30 meters of open ground away. Marcus calculated the odds. Not good, but better than being trapped inside. He looked at Sienna, her copper face barely visible in the darkness, her golden eyes wide but determined. "Stay close to me," he said. "When I say run, you run, and do not stop. Understand?" Sienna nodded. "I understand." Marcus took a breath, gripped his rifle, and gave the signal. They sprinted across the open space, their footsteps loud in the quiet night. They were halfway to the barn when shouts erupted behind them. Energy pulses sizzled through the air, bright blue bolts that scorched the ground around their feet. Marcus fired back without looking, covering their retreat, his old combat instincts taking over. They reached the barn and ducked behind its wall just as a pulse struck where Marcus's head had been a moment before. His hands were shaking as he fumbled for his transport keys, his heart pounding so hard he could hear it in his ears. Sienna grabbed his arm, her copper fingers surprisingly strong. "Marcus, look." He followed her gaze to see more lights approaching from the access road, cutting off their escape route. They were surrounded, trapped between the farm buildings with armed mercenaries closing in from all sides. Marcus's mind raced, calculating options, finding none that ended well. "I am sorry," Sienna said softly beside him. "This is because of my discovery. They are here because of what I found." "No," Marcus said firmly, meeting her golden eyes in the darkness. "This is because someone is poisoning frontier worlds and we had the courage to expose it. That is not something to apologize for." The footsteps grew closer, voices called out in the darkness, demanding they surrender. Marcus checked his rifle charge, knowing it would not be enough against so many. He looked at Sienna, this brilliant, brave woman who had stumbled into his life barely a day ago, and made a decision. "Whatever happens," he said, "I want you to know I am glad you came here. Glad I found you at that spaceport." Sienna smiled, a sad, beautiful expression that made his chest ache. "I'm glad too, Marcus Chen, more than you know." Then the barn exploded with light, voices shouted commands, and Marcus pulled Sienna close as their world descended into chaos. wondering if they would live to see the twin suns rise again.